Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Let me introduce you to the man at the center of today's case, 35-year-old John Poulos. Not too long ago, John made a drastic decision. He abandoned his wife and 3 children, taking their entire joint assets and transferring them into an offshore trust. His sudden departure left his family in financial ruin while he moved on to start a new chapter of his life with a 21-year-old DJ from Colombia, someone he met online. As his wife and children were left to struggle, John was jet-setting across the world with his new romantic partner, openly sharing his new relationship on Twitter. In December 2022, he even boasted about inviting the young woman from Colombia on a vacation before they had even met in person. Fast forward just a little over a month, and John's life would take a sinister turn. Security cameras caught him attempting to dispose of his girlfriend's body before he made a failed attempt to escape the country. This is the chilling story of John Poulos. John Poulos was born in 1988 in Franklin, Wisconsin. In 2009, he married his high school sweetheart, Ashley, and together they built what seemed like a happy life with their 3 children. To outsiders, their relationship appeared perfect. But in 2016, their family faced an unimaginable hardship when their eldest son, just 4 years old at the time, was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. This type of cancer is so uncommon that only about 350 cases are reported each year. Devoted to their son's recovery, John and Ashley became fierce advocates, pushing for FDA approval for an experimental treatment and organizing community fundraisers to cover the mounting medical expenses. With overwhelming support, they managed to raise $60,000 to help with their son's treatment. After a marathon 13-hour surgery in 2017, in which doctors removed over 150 tumors, their brave little boy was finally declared cancer-free. Their son's inspiring journey touched the hearts of many across the country. The family's strength and resilience were celebrated nationwide, and they were even invited as special guests by the Speaker of the House to attend the President's State of the Union address in 2018. At that moment, the Poulos family symbolized hope and determination to countless people facing similar battles. But behind this facade of strength and unity, things were not as they seemed. Few knew that the Poulos family was quietly crumbling from within. While they presented a perfect image to the public, John's behavior at home was another story. He was controlling and abusive toward Ashley, and after enduring years of emotional and psychological torment, she finally decided to leave. In 2021, Ashley filed for divorce, determined to protect herself and her children from John's toxic behavior. However, John was already one step ahead. Before the divorce could be finalized, he moved all their assets into an offshore trust, leaving Ashley and the children with absolutely nothing. Then, as if cutting ties with his past, John disappeared. He left behind not only his family but also the responsibilities of being a father and a husband. Soon, he was living a luxurious lifestyle, bouncing between countries in Europe, including Cyprus, Turkey, and Ukraine. Eventually, he settled in Texas, far from the life he had once known in Wisconsin. Since January 2021, John had completely cut off contact with his children, choosing not to see them or even contribute financially to their upbringing. Despite a court order demanding that he pay child support, John ignored his legal obligations. The divorce proceedings became a nightmare, as John used every loophole he could find to avoid facing consequences. By declaring himself a sovereign citizen, a fringe belief that claims individuals are not subject to government laws, John manipulated the system. This tactic allowed him to dodge legal fees while forcing Ashley to rack up thousands of dollars in lawyer costs. The separation became a drawn-out and painful ordeal for Ashley, who was left to pick up the pieces on her own. The once-admired family was now torn apart, and John was quickly spiraling into a much darker path, one that would eventually lead to the horrifying crime he committed in Colombia. While his divorce was still ongoing, there was something John's wife didn't know. He had already moved on and was seeing someone new. In April 2022, John matched with a 21-year-old woman named Valentina Trespalacios on Tinder. Valentina was a well-known DJ making waves in Colombia's capital city. She had been DJing since her teenage years, and by 21, She had already established herself as a major figure in Bogotá's nightlife scene. Valentina specialized in Latin dance music, especially reggaeton and guaracha, performing at the top clubs in the city. Her rising fame even earned her the title of Breakthrough DJ of the Year at the Columbia Dance Awards in 2019. John quickly became infatuated with Valentina, and before they even met in person, he invited her on a luxurious, all-expenses-paid trip to Cancun, Mexico. It was during this vacation that the two finally got to know each other face to face, and by the end of the trip, they decided to make their relationship official. What followed was a whirlwind romance, with John making frequent trips to Colombia to see Valentina. Each visit was filled with lavish gifts and weekly allowances of cash, although the exact amount is unclear. John was completely taken with Valentina, and within just a few months, he proposed marriage. In December 2022, John posted an unusual response to a viral Twitter thread where users shared their wildest first date stories. His tweet read, "Invited a Colombian woman on vacation without meeting her first. Now we're getting married," accompanied by a photo of him and Valentina together. At the time, this post seemed to show a picture-perfect modern romance, one that spanned continents and blossomed online. But just over a month after this tweet, their seemingly fairy tale relationship would take a horrifying turn. On January 19, 2023, John arrived in Bogotá with plans to start a new life with Valentina. He had told her that he found them an apartment in the city's center, but later, it would be revealed that it was just a short-term rental. At 8:53 p.m. that evening, security cameras captured John pulling a large blue suitcase into the apartment, the very same suitcase that would hold Valentina's lifeless body just 2 days later. The next day, John went to Valentina's mother's house to pick her up, telling her it was time for Valentina to move in with him. Security footage shows John arriving in a gray rental car, and after sharing a passionate kiss, he and Valentina went inside to gather her belongings. Once everything was packed into the car, the couple drove back to the apartment. Surveillance cameras recorded them entering the building around 7 p.m. That evening, they spent about 2 hours in the apartment before leaving again at 9:46 p.m. Valentina had a DJ gig nearby, and John accompanied her to the venue. They returned home briefly at 1:54 a.m., only to leave again at 3 a.m. to go back to the venue. They finally made their way home for the last time a little after 5 a.m. According to court records, their interactions seemed normal throughout the night, and nothing appeared out of the ordinary between the couple. On January 21st, the day after their late night out, John and Valentina spent most of the day at home, resting. The only time they left the apartment was to grab lunch, but they quickly returned and stayed inside for the rest of the day. However, at 10:43 p.m., security footage captured John leaving the apartment by himself. It's unclear where he went, but cameras showed Valentina recording him on her phone, clearly upset about something. The next morning, on January 22nd, at 10 a.m., John was seen on security footage wheeling out the same large blue suitcase he had brought into the apartment just 2 days earlier. This time, though, the suitcase was draped with a gray blanket. It was later revealed that Valentina's body had been placed inside the suitcase, but her head was sticking out of the top because the bag was too small. John used the blanket to cover her head in an attempt to conceal it. Just 4 minutes after leaving the apartment, John was seen on camera in the building's parking garage struggling to lift the now much heavier suitcase into the trunk of his rental car. The video shows John straining under the weight of the bag, confirming that it was significantly heavier than when he first arrived. John then drove off, with surveillance cameras tracking his vehicle as it headed toward the Los Cambulos neighborhood. After abandoning the suitcase containing Valentina's body in the Los Cambulos neighborhood, John immediately headed towards Bogotá's airport. Surveillance cameras captured him arriving at the airport, where he boarded a flight and left the country. Later that evening, a homeless man, rummaging through the dumpsters in Los Cambulos, stumbled upon a blue suitcase with the head of a woman sticking out of it. He quickly alerted the police, and authorities soon confirmed that the body inside was Valentina Trespalacios. Valentina's body revealed the extent of the brutal attack she had endured. She had severe bruising on her neck and signs of head trauma. It was clear to the police who their prime suspect was, John Poulos. Given that he held an American passport, they knew he might attempt to flee. Acting swiftly, Colombian police placed John on a no-fly list to prevent his escape. However, when they arrived at the airport, they discovered he had already fled earlier that day on a flight to Panama City. To make matters worse, authorities uncovered that John had purchased further tickets from Panama to Turkey and then Montenegro, a country with no extradition treaty with Colombia. Realizing the urgency, Colombian police contacted law enforcement in Panama, hoping to catch John before he could disappear for good. Fortunately, they managed to intercept him just before he boarded the flight to Montenegro. He was arrested on the spot and extradited back to Colombia to face justice. Despite overwhelming evidence, John Poulos adamantly denied any involvement in Valentina's murder. He even went as far as blaming the killing on the Medellin cartel, a notorious group led by Pablo Escobar, though it had been disbanded for years. The police saw through his lies and charged him with femicide, a crime that specifically refers to the killing of a woman due to her gender. Investigators soon uncovered that John had been just as controlling and abusive towards Valentina as he had been with his ex-wife. He monitored her social media accounts, controlled who she could talk to, and even hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her whenever he was out of the country. Prosecutors argued that on the night of Valentina's death, the couple had a heated argument that turned violent. John physically assaulted her, leaving multiple bruises on her body. Eventually, he strangled her to death. After the murder, he stuffed her body into the suitcase, attempting to cover up the crime by dumping her remains and fleeing the country. In Colombia, the crime of femicide carries a heavy sentence, with a maximum of 40 years in prison. It's a legal charge that does not exist in the United States, and John tried to use this difference to escape accountability. He claimed that during his arrest, there was no translator present and that he, as an American, didn't understand what he was being charged with. The prosecutors quickly debunked this, stating that John had been fully informed of the charges and was well aware of what was happening. They announced their intention to seek a minimum sentence of 50 years if he were convicted. John Poulos has continued to maintain his innocence and declared he would plead not guilty at trial. John Poulos's trial captivated people around the world, as they followed the shocking details of his crime. After months of court proceedings, the evidence against him became undeniable. The prosecution presented a strong case, highlighting not only his abusive behavior towards Valentina, but also the cold and calculated way he attempted to cover up the murder. From the surveillance footage showing him struggling with the suitcase to his attempts to flee the country, everything pointed to his guilt. In the end, the court found John Poulos guilty of femicide, sentencing him to 50 years in a Colombian prison. The judge condemned his actions as a heartless act of violence, noting how John manipulated and controlled Valentina before taking her life. Despite his attempts to blame others and avoid responsibility, justice was ultimately served. For Valentina's family, the verdict brought some measure of closure. Though nothing could bring her back, they found solace in knowing that the man who took her life would spend the rest of his days behind bars. Valentina's story serves as a tragic reminder of the dangers of domestic violence, even in relationships that seem glamorous from the outside. John Poulos's life of lies and deceit finally caught up with him, and his actions will be remembered as a cautionary tale for years to come. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more shocking and compelling stories ahead.